3 years. 3 years of pretending his silence was patience. 3 years of watching other women get what I never did. A promise, a ring, a future. And just when I thought maybe I was asking too much, he gave everything I ever wanted to my stepsister. Not a stranger. Not an ex. My stepsister. I didn't scream. Didn't throw things. Didn't even say goodbye. I just packed what I came with, and left him standing in the silence he mistook for peace. And when he finally realized what he'd lost, it was already gone. Me. I met Carter when I wasn't looking for love. He was smooth in that quiet, careful way that made you feel like the center of the world without knowing how you got there. We met at a friend's book launch downtown. He said he liked my laugh, and I told him I liked how he didn't force small talk. It was simple, natural, easy. For a while, so were we. We moved in together just over a year in. Shared everything from Spotify playlists to passwords. Had a morning routine so synchronized it could have been choreographed. He made the coffee, I fed the cat. I used to think that was intimacy. But routine is not love. It's repetition. The signs were there. It was in the way he tensed every time someone mentioned weddings. The way he always said, someday, but never soon. And how, no matter how many holidays we spent together, he never invited me to his family's Christmas dinner. Not once. Till I stayed. Because love makes you patient. And women are trained from birth to wait. Wait for the right time. Wait for him to be ready. Wait until he sees what's right in front of him. But time has a funny way of revealing what love tries to hide. It all changed when Ava came home. She was my mother's daughter from her second marriage. Technically my stepsister, but raised like a guest who never learned the rules. 2 years younger than me, all sharp angles and Instagram perfect smiles. Ava had a way of walking into a room like it belonged to her. Even if it didn't. She had bounced between 3 majors for cities, and a string of boys who all ended the same, blocked and bitter. I hadn't seen her in nearly 2 years. And then one day she walked into our shared apartment with a suitcase, a too-wide grin, and the announcement that she'd be staying for a while. Carter had offered. Of course he had. He said it was, just until she gets back on her feet. Said it was the right thing to do. And for a while I convinced myself it was. Until I saw how she looked at him. It started subtly. She'd hover in the kitchen a little too long when he was around. Laugh a little louder than necessary. Wear shorts too short for the weather and brush against him like it meant nothing. But the worst part? He didn't pull away. At first I told myself I was being jealous. Paranoid. Insecure. The usual names women give themselves when something feels wrong but they can't prove it yet. Then came the missed dinners. The working late, excuses. The text messages he suddenly had to check in the bathroom like they were secrets in code. One night I walked into the kitchen to find them laughing. Too closely, too comfortably, and something in me just detached. I started watching. Listening. Not reacting. I became a quiet observer in my own home. And the more I watched, the clearer it became. Carter was slipping away. And Ava was helping him do it. But I didn't ask questions. Didn't accuse. Didn't even cry. Because there's something far more terrifying than a woman who screams. It's a woman who knows the truth and waits for proof. Proof came 2 weeks later. I was folding laundry when his phone buzzed on the coffee table. He was in the shower. I ignored it, until it buzzed again. And again. And again. Curiosity didn't kill the cat. It freed it. I picked up the phone. No passcode. He never thought he needed one. It was Ava. Her name flashing across the screen like a warning I had chosen not to read. The message? Dinner was perfect last night. I still taste you. I remember the feeling exactly. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Clarity. I put the phone down gently, folded the last towel and went into the bedroom. He came out of the shower, smiling, towels slung around his waist like a man who hadn't just imploded the life he helped build. He kissed my cheek. Asked what I wanted for dinner. And I smiled back. Whatever you want, I said. That night I didn't sleep. I watched him breathe beside me. Watched his chest rise and fall like he had nothing to fear. I made a list. Passwords I needed to change. Things I needed to take. Counts I needed to close. I made a plan. I didn't cry. The next morning I called out of work. He left for the gym. By the time he came home, the apartment was empty. Drawers cleared. Closets hollow. Keys left on the counter next to a post-it note that read, "I know. Enjoy your taste of her." He called. 6 times. Texted. 23. I didn't answer. I left the apartment, the city, and the chapter of my life where I was the girl who waited. And Carter? He froze. Because men like him don't believe the quiet ones will leave. They think silence means safety. But my silence was a storm. And he hadn't even begun to feel the rain. It was strange how easy it was to disappear. I moved into a temporary sublet across town. A small studio with peeling paint and thin walls, but it was mine. Mine in the way that nothing with Carter ever really was. I didn't tell anyone where I went. Not mom, not mutual friends. Not even my boss. I took a 2-week sabbatical under the guise of mental health, cashed in a few vacation days and shut off everything tied to him. Blocked his number. Logged out of our shared Spotify. Deleted every photo that showed me smiling with someone who'd already replaced me. But what I didn't delete was memory. And in those memories I found the roots of my revenge. Because when a man betrays you, he thinks he's won. He thinks your silence is surrender. But mine was never that. It was strategy. See, Carter had one weakness he never shut up about: his ambition. He wasn't just cheating. He was climbing. Always networking, always positioning himself, always trying to get in front of the right people. And as fate would have it, I was one of those people. Not directly. But I'd forgotten how close I stood to the people he needed. I worked in corporate branding for a boutique PR firm. We built and fixed reputations, crafted online images for CEOs, startups, influencers. And one of our newer clients? A clean tech entrepreneur with a flashy project and eyes on expansion. A man Carter had been trying to meet for almost a year. I remembered it clearly. "You know Jason Thorne?" Carter had asked once, almost starstruck. "He's one of our clients," I'd said, shrugging. "Could you introduce me?" he'd asked, hopeful. I'd smiled. "When the time is right." He stopped asking after that. And I forgot. He'll know. Because Carter didn't just cheat. He gambled. And now I held the chips. The first move wasn't revenge. It was reinvention. I cut my hair. Dyed it darker, almost black. Rebuilt my wardrobe piece by piece, dressing not for him but for the woman I was becoming. No more soft pastels and gentle silhouettes. I wore sharp lines, structured coats, bold lips. I looked in the mirror and didn't see the girl who waited 3 years. I saw the woman who would never wait again. And then I showed up. At work. At events. At every place he thought I'd disappear from. The city was small. Reputation even smaller. And Carter? He started noticing. The first email came a week after I vanished. Subject: "Please talk to me." From Carter Jameson. Time: 1:17 a.m. I didn't open it. The second came the next day. Subject: "I was wrong. Please." The third came with an attachment. A photo of us on the balcony last fall, laughing. He captioned it, "I missed this. I miss you." So I said nothing. Because silence speaks louder than desperation. And he was already unraveling. I knew because Ava messaged me next. "Ava, you're being childish. You need to talk to Carter. He's been a mess. This isn't you." I stared at the message. Funny how betrayal makes people forget your name. This isn't you. They were right. That girl was gone. 3 weeks after I left, I heard Carter was pitching his startup to Jason Thorne. I found out through a client memo. Jason had agreed to attend a local startup showcase, a kind of mini Shark Tank for rising founders. And Carter was on the list. It was almost poetic. I didn't need to sabotage anything. I just needed to be present. So I dressed to kill. Sleek black jumpsuit. Low neckline. Blood red lipstick. Hair pinned back to reveal a jawline sharpened by silence. I walked into that room like I belonged. Because I did. Jason spotted me first. "Nora," he said, grinning. "Glad you came." I leaned in, kissed him on the cheek, whispered something that made him laugh. And then I saw Carter. Standing near the coffee table, dressed in the blazer I bought him, with a demo kit in one hand and eyes that widened when they met mine. He froze. Like time had stopped. Like seeing me, here now, powerful and untouched, was a twist he hadn't prepared for. I didn't look away. I let him see it. The way Jason's hand hovered at my lower back. The way people nodded at me when I passed. The way I existed completely without him. He approached. Of course he did. He always comes back when the silence feels too loud. Nora, he said, voice low. Can we talk? I turned, took a sip of my wine, and gave him a smile colder than any winter he'd ever feel. I'm here for work, Carter. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something more, but Jason called me over. I walked away without waiting. That night, Jason's firm invested in 2 of the startups from the showcase. Carter's wasn't one of them. Later, I'd find out Jason passed on him after learning about certain character concerns. Turns out I wasn't the only one Carter had been unfaithful to. A former business partner he burned had just joined one of Jason's advisory boards. Karma didn't need help. It just needed time. Ava messaged again. Ava, did you tell people not to invest in him? What's wrong with you? He's been depressed since you left. Why can't you just talk to him? I didn't reply. Let her wonder. Let them both sit in the silence they built together. Because revenge doesn't always need to scream. Sometimes it just needs to walk into a room like it never left, and let its presence do the rest. Carter tried to salvage it. In the weeks after the startup showcase, he spun excuses like threadbare silk. He told friends I left because I couldn't handle pressure. Told his mother I was emotional. Told Ava it was just a phase. But silence has a way of gathering weight. People started noticing. First it was subtle. A shift in the way people greeted him. Fewer invitations. Slower replies. Then came the unraveling. A minor article ran in a niche startup blog. Something about inflated numbers in Carter's prototype. Not false. Not entirely. Just inconvenient. He blamed sabotage. He called it jealousy. But what he didn't realize was that nothing was being done to him. He was simply being revealed. Because when someone builds their house out of mirrors, all it takes is one crack. And Carter had shattered his own reflection. Meanwhile, I was rising. It wasn't overnight. But brick by brick, I built something out of the ruins. My job shifted me to a new account. Higher stakes, higher profile, and ironically, more entangled with people Carter desperately needed approval from. I didn't speak his name. Didn't whisper warnings. Didn't lift a single finger. But reputations are like perfume. The moment the scent turns sour, people notice. And it was starting to rot. Ava, on the other hand, was thriving. Or so her Instagram said. She posted photos of candlelit dinners, couples yoga, beach trips. Their lives were filtered in soft gold tones with captions like, "My peace in human form," and "Everything happens for a reason." I almost admired the effort. But Ava was never good at long games. She liked the chase, not the keeping. And Carter was never going to be enough. She began showing up in places I frequented. A gallery I loved. A book club I co-founded. Even my hair salon, until the stylist politely suggested she try someone who understood her face shape better. It was almost sad. She didn't want Carter. She wanted what he had with me. But imitation without understanding is just noise. And Ava never understood silence. It was a Thursday when I saw him again. The firm was hosting a panel on crisis branding. Ironic, really, and I was moderating. He walked in halfway through, wearing that same overconfident smirk I used to mistake for charm. The room paused when he entered. Not for admiration. But because energy shifts when a ghost walks into your story. I didn't falter. Not when he sat near the front. Not when he leaned forward like he wanted to be seen. After the panel, he approached. I was mid-conversation with a VC partner. Someone Carter had emailed 3 times, never got a reply. "Can I borrow you?" he asked, voice softer now. I turned to the partner. "Excuse me a moment." He followed me into the hall. His eyes searched my face like a map he no longer knew how to read. "You look different," he said finally. "I am. I miss you." That was when I smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes because it's carrying a history too heavy for kindness. "You miss how easy I made your life," I replied. He blinked, stunned. "Nora, I made mistakes." "No," I said, cutting him clean. "You made choices. And now you're living with them. His jaw clenched. I thought you'd at least talk to me. That we'd, I don't know, find closure. I stepped closer, voice velvet and venom. Closure isn't something I owe you. It's what you earn when you're honest. And Carter, you've never been honest a day in your life. I walked away before he could respond. The silence followed me like perfume, rich, intoxicating, unforgettable. The final blow came from a direction I didn't expect. Eva. She showed up at my building 3 days later. I nearly didn't recognize her. Hair frazzled, no makeup, eyes swollen. I need to talk, she said, voice shaking. I didn't invite her in. I let her speak on the doorstep. I thought he loved me, she said. But ever since you left, he's been distant. Obsessed with your name. Always watching your feed, asking your friends about you. He even bought the perfume you used to wear and asked me to try it. My stomach twisted, but not with jealousy. With cold confirmation. He hadn't moved on. He had tried to replace me. And even in that he failed. Ava looked at me, desperate. Did you do something to him? I smiled then. Soft. Chilling. No. I just left. She stared. That's it. That's it. And maybe that's what haunted them most. That I never screamed. Never fought. Never begged. I just stopped participating. And that exit was the loudest thing I ever did. The winter crept in slowly, as if the season itself was giving me space to think. I had stopped tracking Carter's life. Didn't need to. Came to me, through whispers, secondhand questions, unintentional updates. Apparently the investment offers had dried up. His startup was flailing. And word had spread, quietly, discreetly, that Carter Jameson wasn't someone you trusted with long-term projects. His charisma was wearing thin. Because you can't charm your way through consequences forever. Ava had stopped posting. No more golden hour selfies. No more my person captions. No more thinly veiled jabs at women who can't handle a real man. I didn't wonder what happened. Because I already knew. People like Carter fall in love with what reflects them. And when that reflection starts showing cracks, they discard it like a mirror they blame for their own broken face. It was almost poetic how the opportunity came. My firm had just landed a consulting contract with an event organization known for curating elite founder retreats. Quiet weekends for high-net investors and hand-picked entrepreneurs. And guess whose name popped up on the preliminary guest list? Carter. He was still trying. Still clinging to the idea that if he got just one break he could rewrite everything. But this retreat? It wasn't public. It was invitation only. Curated based on recommendations, referrals, and very, very selective endorsement. Which meant I could remove him. One email. One carefully worded sentence to the selection committee. Framed as concern, never accusation. Please note that Mr. Carter Jameson's professional credibility has been under recent review due to potential ethical inconsistencies. I'd recommend re-evaluating his inclusion in alignment with your brand standards. No signature. No direct line to me. Just a shadow from someone who knew exactly how to move beneath the surface. 3 days later, Carter's name disappeared from the list. I didn't gloat. Because revenge done right doesn't need witnesses. It just needs impact. A week after that, I saw him again. A rare Saturday when I allowed myself to wander the old bookstore cafe near our former apartment. Nostalgia maybe? Or closure. I'd barely made it past the poetry aisle when I felt it. That pause in energy. That subtle shift. I turned and there he was. Standing near the counter, ordering black coffee like he hadn't once asked me to teach him how to pronounce macchiato. His eyes met mine. This time I didn't look away. He walked over slowly, like approaching something fragile he already knew he couldn't fix. Nora. Just my name. No preamble. I nodded once. Carter. You look. He stopped. I waited. Different, he finally finished. I am. He laughed softly. I figured. You're everywhere now. Every post, every event. It's like you became someone else overnight. I didn't become someone else, I said, voice low. I became the version of me that doesn't wait for people to choose her. That silenced him. He looked down, hands in pockets like a boy who lost his way. I miss you. I nodded as if he were commenting on the weather. I miss what we had. I tilted my head. Do you miss me, or the comfort of me? He blinked. I leaned closer. You replaced me with someone who wanted to be me. You loved my silence, my steadiness, until it made you feel small. That's not true. But it is, I interrupted. And now that she's not me and I'm not yours, you don't know what to want. He looked hurt. Good. He deserved to feel every scrape of discomfort I once swallowed in silence. You said nothing when you left, he whispered. You just vanished. Exactly, I said. Because words would have dignified you. And you weren't worth the language. I walked past him without looking back. The echo of my heels on tile? That was the only closure he'd get. That night I got a message. From Ava. It was short. Told. He's yours if you want him. I'm done. I didn't reply. I wasn't interested in what was left of Carter. He wasn't mine. He never really was. Later that month I attended a private gala hosted by one of our oldest clients. One of those champagne-soaked evenings where dresses cost more than rent and introductions are more valuable than business cards. I arrived late on purpose. Every entrance should be memorable. Heads turned. Whispers stirred. And then, like moth to flame, Carter was there. I could feel his eyes before I saw him. He was standing beside someone mid-conversation, but I watched him stop talking the moment I walked in. The client beside me leaned in. Isn't that your ex? I smiled. A relic of a less informed version of myself. We both laughed. Carter tried to approach later in the evening. Tried to re-enter the orbit. But no. I was light years ahead. I didn't hear from him again for a while. After the bookstore and the gala, he vanished the way the guilty often do, slipping behind distractions, crafting new narratives to feed a wounded ego. He had to. The version of me he once knew no longer existed. And the version standing in my place? She wasn't interested in apologies. I was deep into the most ambitious client campaign of my career. A cross-platform branding overhaul for a global female-led firm, with press spots, editorial features, and a conference keynote in New York. That keynote would change everything. Because Jason Thorne, yes, the same one Carter once begged me to introduce him to, was a featured speaker. Our names would share the same schedule. Our photos, side by side in Forbes' event preview. Carter saw it. Of course he did. His silence didn't mean absence. He was watching. You could always tell by the timing of his ghostly footprints. Likes on old posts, brief anonymous story views, even a fake account that followed me briefly before vanishing. Desperation doesn't always come in shouts. Sometimes it crawls. One evening, 2 weeks before the keynote, I received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. The handwriting made my chest tighten. Carter. The paper smelled faintly like his old cologne. Something I hadn't smelled in over a year. I almost folded it shut again. But curiosity wins where anger fails. I don't know what I'm hoping for by writing this. Maybe it's stupid. Maybe it's selfish. But I can't go another day without trying to say the things I never had the guts to say when you were mine. You didn't deserve what I did. And not just the betrayal, but the silence that followed it. The way I let it happen. The way I watched it happen. You always asked for clarity. And I made you beg for it. I don't think I'll ever forgive myself for that. Ava was easy. She admired everything I said, needed me in a way that made me feel powerful. But with you I had to be someone. You made me accountable. You saw parts of me I wasn't ready to face. And instead of rising to that, I ran. I see you now, flourishing, unbothered, radiant, and it kills me. Not because I want to hold you again, but because I know I never really did. Not in the way you deserved. If this is goodbye, then let me say it properly this time. Thank you. For your love, your quiet patience, and for leaving when you did. To force me to see myself. And what I saw wasn't good. I'm trying to change. Not for you. For me. I hope you don't hate me. I folded the letter once and dropped it in the fireplace. I didn't burn it out of anger. I burned it because I refused to become sentimental over a version of him that only existed after I was gone. Let that be his closure. I didn't need one. 3 days later, I learned Carter had been denied a major partnership with a mid-sized tech firm, one he'd been chasing for nearly a year. Unofficially, someone from their legal team had advised caution after hearing rumblings about his reliability. They didn't trace the source. But Carter? He assumed. I received another email. Subject: was this you? No greeting. No punctuation. Just fear. Just guilt. Just a man who used to hold me at night, now afraid of what I could do in the daylight. I never replied. I didn't need to. Because here's the thing about power. When you truly have it, you don't need to wield it for the world to feel its weight. The conference arrived. I stood in a white tailored suit, hair swept into a clean knot, lips painted in a color called silence. I stepped onto the stage and gave the talk of my life. Every woman in that room knew what it meant to rebuild after erasure. And Carter? He watched the live stream. I know because 10 minutes after I left the stage, I received a final message from him. Carter, you really did it. I always knew you could. I just didn't think you'd do it without me. So I didn't answer. Not out of cruelty. Out of certainty. He wasn't part of the story anymore. He was just a lesson folded into the chapters I'd already outgrown. Later that night, Jason introduced me to the founder of a VC firm specializing in funding women-led startups. She shook my hand, smiled, and said, "We've heard about the way you handled your former situation. Quiet, effective, and unforgettable." I simply smiled. Because even my silence had grown a reputation. I never thought I'd trust again. Not really. Betrayal doesn't just break your heart. It makes you doubt your instincts, second-guess your boundaries, scan every smile for red flags dressed as charm. So when I met Logan, I didn't notice him at first. He wasn't loud. Didn't compete for attention. Didn't lead with flattery or force familiarity. He was just there. Soft-spoken. Observant. Confident in a way that didn't need to announce itself. We crossed paths at a panel I was speaking on. Logan sat in the back, nodding quietly, his presence steady but unassuming. Afterward, he introduced himself not with praise but curiosity. "You said something on stage that stuck with me," he began. "About how we often confuse peace with absence. Do you mind if I ask what you meant by that?" That was our first conversation. And it didn't feel like flirtation. It felt like foundation. Over the next few weeks, Logan and I kept running into each other. First at a gallery opening. Then at a dinner hosted by mutual colleagues. Eventually at a shared gym class I didn't even realize we both attended. It didn't feel orchestrated. It felt aligned. He never pushed. He just showed up and stayed. One evening, after a particularly long workday, I stopped by the rooftop bar across from my apartment. A quiet place. My place. He was already there. Reading. "Didn't know this was your spot," I said as I slid into the seat next to him. He smiled without looking up. "It is now." We didn't talk about work. Didn't talk about exes. Just books, music, philosophy, and strangely, what our 12-year-old selves dreamed we'd be. His answer? A teacher. Or a carpenter. I liked building things with my hands. I wanted to be invisible. He looked at me then, really looked. Not anymore. I didn't let him in quickly. There were nights I ignored his text. Days I disappeared behind work, claiming busyness as an excuse when it was really fear. But Logan never pushed. He was the opposite of Carter in every way. No pedestal. No pressure. No hidden motives masked in affection. Just patience. Just presence. Terrified me. Because I had rebuilt myself into a woman who needed no one. And here he was, quietly offering something I didn't realize I wanted again. Peace. Not the absence of noise kind. The kind that comes when someone sees you fully, and stays anyway. Carter's shadow tried to re-enter once more. A shared contact forwarded me an event invitation. An exclusive startup roundtable in San Francisco. And on the list? Carter. Hosting. Apparently he'd clawed his way back into the scene. Smaller circles but still alive. Still branding. Still chasing. What caught my eye wasn't his name. It was the tagline. Success rebuilt. How to come back from collapse. He was repackaging his downfall as resilience. There was a time I might have shown up. Might have stood in that room just to watch his hands shake when he saw me walk in. But now I didn't need to be present to be remembered. Because even in the rooms I don't enter, my name lingers. He made sure of that. Logan never asked about Carter. Not even once. But one night as we walked through the art district, his fingers brushing mine without pressure, I told him anyway. Not the scandalized version. Not the tabloid-worthy drama. It's the truth. 3 years, I said. And he never once chose me. Until it was too late. And by then I had already chosen myself. Logan nodded. Did it make you cold? He asked. No, I said. It made me precise. He smiled, that slow, quiet smile I was beginning to crave. Good. The world needs more women who know exactly what they're worth. He kissed me that night. Not like a conquest, but like a man holding something rare and knowing not to rush it. It wasn't the kind of kiss that rewrote history. It was the kind that made you stop chasing ghosts. Back at work, things were shifting fast. My firm was negotiating a merger with a global branding group. If it went through, I'd be promoted to partner, one of the youngest in the company's history. I could feel it, momentum, weight, legacy. The life I was building didn't have Carter in its blueprint. But it had something better. A version of me that was no longer fighting for survival. She was leading. And when you lead from a place of clarity, not spite, you become untouchable. Spring had arrived again. Exactly 1 year since I'd walked out of Carter's life. No suitcase. No goodbye. Just the truth, heavy in my chest and sharp enough to carve out a new life. A year later, that life was thriving. The merger went through. I made partner. My name appeared in industry articles. My photo accompanied thought pieces. Invitations arrived faster than I could accept them. My voice, once silenced by waiting, had become sought after. And Logan? He remained steady beside me, not clinging, not crowding. Just consistent. There were moments now, soft, quiet ones, where I'd look across a crowded room and see him watching me, not with pride but with peace. Like he knew I didn't need him. And loved me all the more for it. But the past always has a last breath. And Carter? He still hadn't exhaled. I heard murmurs. He had moved cities, taken a consulting role, tried to reposition himself as a coach for resilient entrepreneurs. The irony almost made me laugh. His personal life was quiet. Ava was gone, apparently moved to Miami and engaged to a DJ. No new relationship rumors. No scandals. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, just empty. That should have been the end of it. But some men don't let go of the idea of you even when they destroyed the reality of you. It happened on a Wednesday. Logan and I had just returned from a gallery event. I was still in my heels, keys in one hand, phone in the other, when I saw the figure by the steps to my apartment building. Familiar. My stomach didn't drop. It settled. As some ghosts don't scare you. They bore you. Carter, I said, tone flat. He turned. Worn. Pale. Thinner than I remembered. I didn't think you'd come outside. I didn't, I said, stepping around him to the building door. He followed but didn't get close. I know I shouldn't be here, he said quickly. But I didn't know how else to reach you. You blocked everything. I said nothing. He continued, I'm not here to make a scene. I swear. I needed to see you. Just once. Just to say it. I held the door handle but didn't open it. You already said it. In your letter. He looked surprised. You read it. I did. Then I burned it. That stunned him silent. I let it hang between us like frost. I didn't come here to beg, he said finally. That's good, I replied. Because it wouldn't matter. He exhaled. You look powerful. Different. I am. There was a pause. Then he asked the one question I hoped he would. Was it worth it? Leaving without a word. I turned to him fully now. The woman I was, standing at the intersection of then and now. Yes, I said. Because the silence taught me everything your presence never did. Carter looked down. I miss you. I miss the way you made me feel. And that, I said, is exactly why you lost me. I didn't invite him up. Didn't ask if he was okay. Didn't check to see if he had somewhere to go. He was a grown man. He had made a grown decision. And now he was living with it. I walked into the building and let the door close behind me. He didn't knock again. Inside, Logan was seated on the couch, a book in his hand, wine uncorked. He looked up as I entered. "Everything okay?" I nodded, slipping off my coat. "Just another page turning." He didn't press. He didn't need to. He trusted that whatever storm had just passed, I'd already outgrown it. Weeks later, a friend forwarded me a video clip from a self-help podcast. Carter was a guest. The caption read, "Rebuilding after public failure. Carter Jameson opens up." I watched for 30 seconds. Enough to see him say, "Sometimes the best thing someone can do for you is leave." I clicked away. That was his closure. Mine was knowing that I didn't just walk away. I vanished from his life in a way he'd never be able to replicate, replace, or repair. Months passed. Logan and I traveled to Lisbon. Then Kyoto. He asked once, quietly without pressure, if I could see a future with him. I said yes. Not because I needed him, but because I didn't. That's the difference. Love born from absence doesn't cling. It chooses. Deliberately. Daily. The night before our engagement party, I sat alone on the balcony of our new home. The sky was wide, clear, and quiet. I thought of the girl who waited 3 years for a ring she never got. And the woman now wearing one she never had to ask for. I thought of the silence. The betrayal. The sting of being replaced by blood. And I felt nothing but peace. Because revenge isn't loud. It's not screaming in the street or ruining someone's life with flames. It's walking away so thoroughly that even your absence haunts more than your presence ever did. It's building a life so full that there's no space left for their shadow. And that's what I did. He refused to propose. He chose my stepsister. He watched me walk away without a word. And in that silence he froze. Because I wasn't asking for closure. I was the closure. And I didn't have to raise my voice to ruin him. I just had to become someone he'd never be allowed to know again.